Hey, what is up everyone, and welcome back to another video. In today's video, we'll once again be looking at state management in React, but this time we'll be using Redux. So if you haven't seen my previous video on state management in React where I use the context, go check it out. The video will be linked in the description. So what exactly is Redux? Well, Redux is a predictable, centralized and flexible state container for JavaScript applications. So that is important to note that Redux is not built specifically for React. It can be used completely separate in any JavaScript application. So in today's video, we'll be looking at how we can combine React and Redux to create our state management workflow. I'll be showing you how to implement Redux by creating this little online shopping cart tutorial. So let us look at what we will be building today. I have already created in the starting files all of the components and their stylings. So in this video, we'll only be focusing on how to connect Redux and control our state. So let's take a look at what we have here. We just have a basic e-commerce demo site which has a shopping cart capability. So these are my products. Each one of these are individual product components on my product page. And if I were to view a single product, I get that state and it is pulled from the Redux into this page. And I can add an item from here. And if you see I add an item, the counter up here increments. So if I were to go back and add something from here, I want to add one of these items, say this one. And now if I go to my cart page, I can see both of these items being logged in my cart. I can see all of their data, their individual price, everything like that. And then I can see the quantity of both of these, how many times I selected them. I can increment and decrement this counter, and as you can see, the state updates in all of the components. So if I were to put this back to 1, and you can see this price corresponds to both of these having a quantity of 1. And if I were to say I don't want to read, I want to delete this, then you can delete the items from this page and everything else around the application will update. So this is the main idea of this application. And so now that we have a very good idea of what we will be building today, let's dive right into the code and see what is going on over there. Okay, so for our starting application, I have all of the files for the starting product, which is this one we are seeing right here. All of this is just hard coded. Nothing here actually works. So the view would work, but everything is hard coded. So I have the files for both the finished end product and the starting files in the description below. So if you want to follow along, you can just download the starting files and then work with me from there. So basically, we just want to implement Redux into this application to get it up and running. So I'm just going to have a quick run through of what we currently have here. So we don't have any Redux in this application yet. So basically, let's start at the app file. So here I just enable the routing. So I use the React Router DOM. And I just enable the routing for me to be able to switch like this between different pages and different components. So this is technically the only thing that happens over here. And then if I go to the nav bar, which is this component that is rendered here, the nav bar is basically just two links. One that links back to the home page. For example, if I were to go to the cart and I click on the link here, it goes back to the home page, and then the other link to go to the actual cart. So if I were to click here, it goes to the actual cart. So that's all that's happening in the nav bar. And that counter, this counter over here, can be found right over here in the nav bar. So that is what we're going to also update with Redux. So that is the nav bar. If we go to the products folder, you can see there's products, the plural, and then the individual folder. So the products page, this can be seen as a products page. So this would be this part of the application, not the nav bar included, only this part. And then the individual product would obviously be this little card that is rendered here to display each individual product. Okay, so that would be all for the products. And then the single item is obviously, if I were to click on view item, this would be the single item part of the application. So with that done, we know what the folder structure looks like, so let's dive right into it. Okay, so I'm just going to close this up here so we can start all clean. So we want to implement a Redux, so let's start right away with that. So first things first would be to install the dependencies. So let's quickly install them. There are two of them. The first one is Redux, which is the Redux package itself. And the second one is React.Redux. This is the connection between Redux and React, the package that helps us connect the two. So let's install that. And while we wait for that to install, we can go into our source folder and create a Redux folder. In here, we'll do all of our Redux setup and managing of the reducers. So in our Redux folder, I'd like to start off with two files, the store.js and the root reducer.js file. So the store is basically, you can see this as one big centralized place where all of your state data is stored, hence the name as well. This is where all of your data is placed together, and the reducer, the root reducer, is what's connected to your store so that you are able to manipulate and change and reorder all of the data as you want. So let's start with the store. To start with the store, we have to import create store from the Redux package, from Redux, if I can just spell like this. And then we can create a store variable. Oh my goodness. A store variable. And we set this variable equal to the store function we just imported up here. And this create store takes in a reducer, as you can see here, a reducer, and then some enhancer. We'll get to the enhancer in just a second, but we'll first create this reducer. So this would be what is going to be created in this root reducer file. So with that done, we can export default, just so that we don't forget this, the store variable. So this is just, we are later going to use this variable in our different React app. Okay, so we can save this, and then we can go to our root reducer file. In here, we want to import, also from Redux, we import combined reducers. So combined reducers, what it basically does is, like in the name, we can have different reducers in our applications. So one reducer will handle the UI state, another reducer will handle the shop state, and so on. So this will just combine all of those reducers into one reducer, and we're calling that one reducer root reducer. And then we pass it this combined root reducer. And this takes in an object, and in this object we pass all of the reducers we want to combine. So I'm just going to keep it empty for now because we haven't created any reducers yet, but this will be where all of the reducers go in and is combined. So once again, we'll export this root reducer because we're going to need this function or this variable. We're going to import and use it inside of our store. So here I can say import root reducer from that root reducer file. Now, as you can see in there, I just pass this right in here, just like that, and we're basically done with the store. Later we're going to add an enhancer to use the React Devtools. But with that done, the last step to connect our Redux store with our actual React application is going into the index.js file. This is the topmost level of your application. This is the top component, and here is where we use the React Redux package. So I'm going to say import something from React Redux, and this something is going to be a component called provider. This provider is basically the same as the context way of sharing state. You are going to wrap your app component with this provider. So let's quickly do that. We say provider, and then we just wrap our app just like that. This provider takes in a prop, and this prop is called store. So you can probably see what we're going to do here. We're going to import this store and pass it in right over here. So let's quickly do that. So we say import store from the Redux folder in the store file, and then we just pass in the store right over there, just like this. With this done, we have set up Redux for our application. So the last thing I just want to do is quickly add in the React Devtools so we can use it inside of our browser. So in order to do that, I'm going to open a new tab, and then we go to Chrome and we can say Redux Devtools. And then the first Chrome extension that pops up, we go to Redux Devtools, and you can just say, it would give you, here it says remove from Chrome. I already have it set up, so you can just say add extension, and then it would bring up this Redux Devtools in your extensions. You can see it right over there, this little thingy right there. And the Redux Devtools is basically what makes Redux so amazingly powerful, because you can see states, movement, and all of that fun stuff. So if once it is installed and added to your browser, you can go into your inspector and you'll see a tab called Redux, but you can see now nothing shows up here. So let's connect our application, so this application running here, to the Redux Devtools. And in order to do that, we have to install a package called npm install redux-dev tools-extension, just like this. Once this is done downloaded, we can go back to our store, here where we say create store, and we're going to import one single thing. The install is successful. Now we can import from that package we just used, the React Redux Devtools. We're going to compose with Devtools. So this we just extracted or imported from this package is a function, and this function will pass as this enhancer. So we can say compose with Devtools, and then we run it as a function. With this done, if we save and we start our application now, and we go to, just opening another one, and we go to the inspector and into the Redux, we can see it has a different user interface now. So this means, if you see this, it means all is good and your application is connected to the Redux Devtools. So this is all great. So let's continue. And what I'm going to do is create a folder. I'm going to just close all of these up. This one I'm not going to close the root reducer because we're going to use it in just a second. But in the Redux folder, I like creating all of my different reducers in their own separate folder. So I'm going to make one for shopping, which is the only one we're going to have. But if you have authentication, UI, you'll create different folders for them. And inside of this folder, I create 3 files. It's shopping-types.js, and then shopping-actions.js, and then shopping-reducer.js. So now I have all 3 of these different files. So inside of the root reducer, we have not passed anything to the combined reducers. So this would be this file. We're going to code everything in here in just a second. But this file, whatever is going to be in here, which is going to be the reducer function, we have to pass this reducer function, import it first. So let's quickly do that. We can say import shop reducer from that file. So we can say shopping and then shopping reducer. And then we can just place this one right in here. We'll call this key value pair shop, and then I pass it the shop reducer, just like this. So with this done, our root reducer file is completed and we can close this up. So now let's start with the types. I like starting with the types because types let you think about what your application needs to be doing. So if we go back to our application and think about what our application needs to do, we need to be able to view an item. And in order to view an item, we need that item's data. So that's one thing. Another thing is add to the cart. And when we go to the cart, we need to be able to adjust the quantity, and then we need to be able to delete an item. So those are the 4 types of actions we're going to need. So basically what we do here is we say export const add to cart, and we set this equal to a string, and we just add the string in here. So this is just string identifiers, and the reason we use string identifiers, it just helps for importing, and it helps to avoid spelling mistakes, and it's just really cool. From cart, copy this and then add it as a string. This is really simple, and you'll see where we use it in just a second. If you've watched my context, you'll see it's basically the same. Adjust quantity, you can copy this and add it in right there. Export const, and we can say load current item. And I like giving it descriptive names, because then whoever uses this actually knows what all of these types would be doing. So you say export and then a constant, and then we export that. So with this done, we can save, and we're completely done with this file. So now I like to start with the actions. So I say import star, which means everything, as action types from the / shopping types. I want to use all of those constants as action types. So now I can create all of these functions. I can say export, because I directly export these functions, and I can say const add to cart, and this function will take in item ID, because when we add it to the cart, we're going to go through all of the products that we have and search for that specific ID and add that ID to the cart. So this is the reason I only use this, because say something were to update in your backend, say the price would update, you don't want to add the old price, you want to add the new price, and this just helps with that balancing effect. So once we get the ID, we just return. So this function will be called inside of our dispatch. So we'll dispatch something with this function, with this argument, and then we'll return some type, and this type would be equal to actions types dot add to cart. And then I will send a payload to my reducer, and this payload will contain an ID, and I'll send it the parameter that is passed in. So let's do this for all 3 of the others. So I can say const remove from cart, and this takes in item ID as well, because I want to remove that specific item with its ID from the cart. So I can once again return a type of actions types dot remove from cart, and then a payload, once again same, just like that. Then I can say export const, and here I want to adjust quantity. And in this part, I want to get 2 arguments. I want to get the item ID and the new value. So if I were to go to our application and I view this cart, this quantity for this specific ID, I want to give it a certain value. So if I were to click up and down, it's not a link now, but we'll do it in just a sec. I want to send this value as an argument as well. So here I can once again return. I want to return a type of actions, adjust quantity, and then a payload containing 2 fields. This would be the ID, which is equal to item ID, and then the quantity, the new quantity, which would be equal to the value. So with that done, we can save, and then the last one would be to load the current view. So we can say load current item. And in here, we're just going to pass the entire item just as it is shown in the front end. So we'll receive the entire item with all of its data as an argument, and then we'll just return a type of action type dot load current item and a payload, and then I'm just going to pass the item directly onto the payload. So with this done, we're done with the actions file. So Nothing has been done yet with our components, so this is all just a little bit of boilerplate. But once you get this done, it's really easy to start working with your data, especially if you figured out your types from the beginning. Then it makes it really easy to figure out what you need to do here. I'm not going to handle any asynchronous requests with something like Redux Thunk or Redux Saga. I'll do that in a completely separate video. I just want to focus on how Redux actually works and how you connect it to your application. So once we're done with that, we can continue to our reducer. So this function will be sent, or dispatched is the better term, to our reducer containing this string identifier. So now inside of our reducer, we once again import all of these action types from the types file. And a reducer is basically just a function. It is a function that takes in some state and some action. The action is the part that gets dispatched, and it contains this type right over here. This type will be on this action that is dispatched. So this state, we have to send it some default state. So I'm going to say const initial state and set this equal to an object. And this would be the state of our shop. So our shop would have the products. This would just be a normal array of products, and each product will be an object that contains an ID, it contains a title, a description, a price, and an image. And then we'll have the next thing, which would be the cart. The cart would be its separate array, and it would also contain an object of the same, but in this case it would have a quantity add to it as well. So if I were to do it like this, it would have a quantity field as well. This would count the amount of times right over here, how many times you've added that product. And then the last one would be the current item, and we'll set this to null initially. So let's start with the switch statement in here. And the switch statement, you can do this with if statements as well, but switch is just much more easier and cleaner in my opinion. So we can say if this action dot type, so this action that is sent to this reducer, if its type, so this part over here, is equal to action types dot add to cart, then I want to do something to the state. I won't start with that now, but I'm just gonna put all of them in here, all of the actions. So action type dot remove from cart, and then I want to do something to the state in this return right over here. You can break this down into functions and return that function, but I'm just gonna make it as obvious as possible. So action dot types, and here I want to adjust quantity. I want to do something to the state, and then action types, and I want to do load current item. And here I just want to do something to the state. When I say I want to do something to the state, I'm going to manipulate this state right over here. And now that I see it, I have not yet passed this state in as default like this. So now I just pass into the state a default state. And then the last thing I need to do is default. So if none of these string identifiers are used, I don't want to do anything. I just want to return the state just as it is. If I save this, I want to export this default function and save this. And if I go back to my application, I can now see my state. I should be able to see my state. Here is my state. So this Redux tools is really amazing. I'm not going to go through all of these gadgets you can have here. You can time travel, see what happened in your application, but it's really, really cool. So I'm going to the state tab, and now I can see my state in my application. It would be my products, my cards, and then the current item. So with this all done, let's now, before we actually do the logic of managing the state, let's go connect our Redux to a specific component and see how that would work. Okay, so let's start by going to our components folder in the source folder, and here we'll navigate to the products folder. Inside of the products folder, we have our product and then the products page. On the products page, we're basically just rendering one product component. So if we check in our application, we can see, I'm just going to close this down for now, we only see this single component. So this is all static, so we don't pass anything in here. So if I were to go to that component, we can see everything is hard-coded, from the image to whatever the title and description and price, it is all hard-coded. And we want to change that by connecting it to Redux. So I'm just going to close the actions. I'm going to keep the reducer open, and then I'm just going to open the products file. And in here we can start by connecting Redux to our React app. And in order to do this, we use the React Redux package, and something valuable it gives us is the connect function. So we can say React Redux, and we import the connect function. This connect function basically allows us to const map state to props. So this basically tells you exactly what it does, and I'll get to it in just a second. So now I can choose what state in my Redux store I want this component to have access to. And this connect function, we'll send it in as a higher order component, and we pass it in as a parameter, this map state to props, just like this, and then pass the products in its own braces as well. So now we can return from the state we pull it from, I want the products. So if I were to go to my root reducer, I want this array because I want to render those products, each one of them individually, in this products component. So in order to do that, I say return products, and now I tell the React Redux tool where to get it. So I want to get it from the state, so the store, and I want to go to the shop. And the reason I say shop is because if you remember, inside of the root reducer, we named that piece of the reducer shop. So if there were multiple reducers, you would give each one of them a different name, and this shop refers to whatever state is in this reducer. So anything in here, so we can say shop.products. Now we have access to this products inside of our props because it maps the state to props. So now I can destructure products just like this, like so, and then I can do a simple map function. I can say products.map, and then for each product I want to render this product component. So if I save this and go back, I should see no products being rendered. Oh, I was on the wrong page. So now we can see there is no products being rendered. So this means it works, because if we go to our our Redux Devtools, we can see that the state is empty. There is no products in our array, so it's rendering nothing. But I'm going to insert a few products in here. I'm just going to copy and paste it, just like this. And if I were to save this and go back to my application, I can now see that there are 3 components being rendered, because there are 3 items in my products list, but each one of these have this exact same hard-coded values. So now I want to insert each of the individual values dynamically. So in order to do this, this is just basic React. I'm going to say product data is equal to that product being sent. And when I do this, I have to give each one of these individual components, which is rendered in a list, a key, and that is what this ID is useful for as well. So I can say this product being mapped through, give its ID as a key. So if I were to save this, nothing would change, but if we were to go into my individual product component, I can now destructure this product data, which I passed in here as product data, and I passed it the entire product. So now I have access on this product data to all of the individual key value pairs on this object. So now I can dynamically insert it. I can change this source to product data dot image, and the alt I'm going to set equal to product data dot title. I'm just going to copy product data so I don't have to type that over. You can destructure it as well, but for simplicity and time I'm just going to do this like this. Product data dot title, and over here we have product data dot description, and then I have product data dot price, like this. And then where do I have next? This should be everything for now. So if I were to save this and go back to my application, I can now see that each one of these individual components are rendered dynamically based off of the product state, whichever is in the store. So you can use your backend to pull data and populate this products array. But for simplicity and just understanding how Redux works, I'm not using any asynchronous backend requests for now. I'll do that in a separate video. So now we can see this working. So now, in able to connect, we import this connect function. We say map state to props, and we use this higher order component to map this prop to whatever state we need to pull out. So let's continue on by completing the cart. So if I were to add something with this button, it would update the cart value. So now we're going to work on the cart values. In order to do this, we have to continue working on the shop reducer. So now, starting with our shop reducer, the logic for handling the data with every different action being dispatched, I'm going to quickly go through this. So the first one, if you want to add something to the cart, there's a few things we need to do. First, we need to check if the item is in the cart already. So if it's already there, we don't want to create a separate entry in the cart, we just want to adjust the quantity. And before that, we want to get the items data from the products array. So in order to do this, we can say const item, which we just name it item. So the specific item that comes in, we want to say state.products.find. So here we can say for a specific product, we want to find where the product.id is equal to the action.payload.id. Because if you remember, this action.payload, if I go back to the actions, this action.payload contains another embedded key value pair which has an ID. So in there we say if that action.payload.id is equal, we want to get that specific item from the array. So basically what this would do is it would go through the array and find that specific entry and its data. And then after that, what we want to do is check if this item is already in the cart. So we can say const is, which is in cart. So let's just name it in cart. And here we can say state cart dot find. And we can say item. And here we can do a little bit of ternary. We can say item.id is equal. So if this item we're looping through in the array is equal to the action.payload.id, I want to return true to this variable. Else I want to return false. So now true or false will be saved in this in cart if this item is already inside of our cart. So now let's manipulate the data. So we can spread the state, because we have to always spread the state because it is reference types. An object is a reference type. So if we don't mutate it properly, we'll lose or overwrite our data. So we can say cart. So we're going to this specific key value pair. And now we check if it's in the cart. So we can say in cart. So this should be true or false. If this is the case, I want to say state.cart.map. And here I want to take the item and say, if this item.id is equal to the action.payload.id. If this is true, I want to create a new object for that specific entry. So if I were to go up here and I'm searching for 2, I would say, okay, this is not equal, this is equal. So I'm completely going to overwrite this one. So basically what I do is I say spread that current item in a new object and adjust its quantity. And I want to say item.quantity plus 1. So if it's already in the cart, I just want to add to its quantity. Else, I just want to send that item. So this generally will work as follows. If this is true or false, so if it's true, I want to do this. If it is false, I just want to create a new array, spread the current state.cart in there. So I want to create a completely new cart and spread whatever is in the cart in. And then I want to add a new object. And in this object, I add that specific item, which is referring to this item up here. And I want to add a quantity to this object and set it equal to 1, because now it is its first time inside of this cart. So I just want to add it like this. If you don't understand this, I suggest checking up and learning more about ternary operators and how to use them. It's really simple if you get the hang of it, if you start reading it correctly. So I'm just going to go over it one more time, and then the rest I'm going to do quickly. So we spread the state because we don't want to lose the current or all of the products. So we spread the state, and in the cart object pair, we check if this check returns true. So if it is in the cart, all I want to do is map through the cart and find that specific ID, find that specific item. And then I want to change its quantity. So I want to spread all of the data that's inside. So if we check with this, I want to add everything that's in there, but I want to adjust the quantity. So I say the quantity is equal to whatever it currently is plus 1. Else I just want to send it the item. And then if it's not in the cart, so if this part is false, this part will happen. So I would create an array, spread it into the array, and add that to the state of the cart. So let's remove it from the cart. So basically we once again spread the state, and here it's pretty simple. We just say cart, and we say state.cart.filter. And basically all we want to do is we're going to go all through all of the entries in the cart, and if that entry is not equal to the action.payload.id that we receive from our actions, then I don't want to return him. So what this will do is it will return everything except for the one we want to delete. So the new array will not contain the old item. So that is done with the deleting. And adjusting is a little bit more tricky. It's once again a little big ternary operator, but we will get there. We say state, we map the state, or spread the state, and we say cart state.cart.map, because now we want to go look for that specific item in the cart, and we want for that specific item we compare it like this. Once again, action.payload.id, and if we find that item, we want to recreate him by spreading the item again and setting the quantity value equal to whatever we got on the action.payload.quantity. If you remember from the actions, when we adjust the quantity, we get two things on the payload. We get a quantity and an ID. So in the reducer, I say, if I find that ID in the cart, I want to recreate that object by spreading the current item and then just setting its quantity equal to whatever the quantity was set to. Else, I just want to return the item. Just like this. Very simple. And then loading the current item into state, we can just once again spread the state, and we can say current item is equal to action.payload, because we just send that individual object and set it where it is currently null. So with that done, we're basically done with our reducer. So now let's not focus on the reducer anymore, and let's continue to making the logic in the application work. So we're done with this, and now we can start using the action functions to manipulate the data. Currently we're just reading from the state, but now we want to do something that when we press a button, it actually sends off some function to manipulate the data. So let's do that. Let's work on the add to cart. So in the product file, we have these two buttons. We have the view and then the add to cart. So I want to use that add to cart function in my actions, so this one up here, to add it to the cart from this button. So we can do the exact same thing. We can say import React Redux, and then we can const, and this one is map dispatch to props. So dispatch basically just means sending that function. So we can say dispatch, and here we once again return. We want to return add to cart, and here it takes an anonymous function, and this anonymous function will dispatch that add to cart function. And in order to use this add to cart function over here, we have to import it from these actions. You can see we export it directly here, so we have to import it. So down here we can say import something from, and now we have to navigate all the way to that Redux folder and into the shopping and into the actions. So here I can destructure add to cart, just like this. Now I have access to this add to cart function inside of this component. So I can once again destructure it from the props, and whenever I click on this button, so I can say on click, I want to run this function. And what this function is going to do, it's going to add to cart, and the add to cart wants a ID. It wants an item ID. So in here I can say this anonymous function receives an ID, and it is passed to the add to cart. So in here I have to pass an ID between the brackets, and I get that ID from product data.id, just like this. So if I were to save this, I have not yet connected the dispatch to prop to my component, so I use the connect. I say null because I'm not using any of the state, so I'm not mapping anything to state to props, so I have to say null. And here I can say map dispatch to props. And then with this done, we can go back to our application, and if we check in the Redux tools, if I were to click on add to cart, we can see this add to cart string identifier fired off, and something happened here. And if I go to my state, I can now see inside of my cart it has a item. This item contains all of this data. So now we want to now we have to try and update this value over here, and once we click on the cart, we want to see the specific cart, not any hard-coded values. So let's first focus on this little counter over here. Okay, so we're basically done with this part, which is a great thing. We can actually do the add to current. We'll get to that we'll get to that at the end. Okay, so let's go to the nav bar, and inside of the nav bar we want to check how many items is in the cart. So we once again going to say import connect from React Redux const map state to props. So here we're not dispatching anything, we just want some state, and we want to return the cart from state.shop.cart. And I want to connect this by saying map map state to props, just like this. Now I can destructure this cart out of the props, And I want to do the following calculation on this. In order to do this, I'm going to import two things from React. I'm going to use state, because I'm going to set that counter to a state, so it will keep on refreshing, and use effect. So use state, I'm going to set equal to 0, and I'm going to destructure out of this use state, array destructuring. I'm going to call this cart count and set cart count. And you can see what I'm going to do here. This is going to be the value that is being rendered over here. So I can say cart count, just like that. So now if I were to save this and go back, you can see this is 0. It was 1 initially hard-coded, but now it's 0 because it's actually the state value. Now I want to update that state value based on whether the cart's quantity changes, and that is what I'm going to use effect for. So this will happen as follows. I would say use effect, and I would give it a function to run, and then in this array at the bottom of use effect, I would add in the cart. So if anything changed on this cart, I want to refresh, because that means the counter most likely has to update. And then if this cart count value changes, it should also refresh. And I'm just adding that as a dependency. So I can say let count equal 0, and this will count how many values are in our cart. So we can say cart, which we import or destructure as props, for each item in that cart array, count, so set this count variable plus equal to item dot quantity. So I'm going to try and explain this as quickly as possible. If we go to our reducer, each item in the cart has a quantity. So if I were to add 2 items in the cart with quantity 2, then the total amount of items in the cart will be 4. So this is what it does here. It loops through the cart array, and then it counts all of the quantities of each of the items that is added, and that would populate the count. Once that 4 is done, I want to set the cart count equal to whatever count is, and this will update depending on the size of the cart. So if I were to go back and I were to say add to cart, you can see this thingy updating. So if I were to click it again, it would update. If I were to go here and update. So this is all great. If I go into my Redux Devtools just to prove to you it is working, we can see that the state under the shop, the cart now currently has 3 items, and each one of these 3 items has a quantity of 2. Just like that. So now we want to go into the cart page and render each item in the cart. So let's do that next. So let's close all of this up. We can go to the cart folder, and inside of the cart file, here I want to render this dynamically. So once again, I'm going to import connect from React Redux, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to say const map state to props equal to some state, or this function has state as a parameter, and then I want to get the cart, and I want to extract it from the state shop.cart. Then I want to connect this to my component. Okay, so now that is done, so I can destructure the cart out from here, just like this. Now I can map through the cart. I can say cart.map, and for each item in the cart, I want to render the cart item. And this is working in the same fashion as the products that gets rendered. So this is going to be hard coded for now, but we'll see if we go back here and we add things to the cart, there should be 2 components being rendered. So we haven't updated this yet, but this would be in the individual cart. So all of this is still hard coded. You can see it's the same things, but it's 2 different components. So let's quickly do that. So inside of the cart item, I'm going to receive a few props. So inside of this cart item, we can destructure a few things. So let's first pass it in as props. So I want to pass the item data, and I'm going to send it this item. And then once again a key, I want to give it the item.id. To save this and go here, I can destructure the item data and now use that to fill in all of these. So I can say item data dot image. I'm just going to copy this and change the last part every time. So the alt I'm just going to set equal to title. The title is obviously going to be title. The description will be description, and so on. I'm just going to go through this quickly. And then when we get to this quantity of the input, we want to set its value equal to whatever the quantity was logged in the state. So we can say here equal to the quantity. So we're going to have to put it on change value here if you want to change it to adjust the values in just a second. So with that done, that looks like everything. So let's save. Let's go back to our application, add something to the cart, go to the cart, and now we can see that specific item. So if I add something else, I go back, I can see the different item. If I were to add 2 of them, you can see it's 3, and now the quantity over here is 2. This is not updating correctly, so we'll quickly handle that. So it's in the physical cart. Here we render the cart summary, and in the cart summary we want to render the total amount of items in the cart and then the total price. So we need to calculate 2 things in this component. So we are already using the cart from the Redux, so we can just do this again as we did with the navbar. We can say use effect and use state, and here we can say const use state and set this equal to 0 and just create 2 of them. And then in the array destructuring, this one will be for the total price and set total price, and this one will be for total items and set total items. So these are the 2 things we will need. We need the items that is in the cart and the total price of that cart. So in order to calculate that, we go to use effect and we run that function, and in our dependencies array we add in 4 things. We add in the cart, the total price, the total items, sorry, excuse me, it's 5 things, and then the total set price, and then the set total items, just like this. Just gonna name it items. So if any one of those things had to be changed or to be used, we want to use effect. And now we can create our variables. Let items equals 0 and let price equals 0, and here we can say cart dot for each item in the cart we want to set the items plus equal to the item dot quantity. So this is the exact same thing we did in the navbar. And the next one is the price. We want to set equal to price equals to that item's quantity, so how many items is selected, times that item's price. So if I were to go back, I have 3 items, so it's $15 for a single item, and I have only 1 of them, so this would be 15. If I had 2 of them like this, it would be 20 times 2, which would be 40. So that is why I calculated like this, and I just plus it to the current price. And then at the end, I just set total price equal to price and set total items equal to items, just like this. So to save this, first, before I save, I want to change this. I want to set this items to total items and this price equal to total price, just like this. Okay, missed the bracket. If I save this and go back, my cart is cleared because I refreshed. Now I want to add to the cart each one of these. If I go back to the cart, I can see these two things updated correctly with the change of the cart. So now I want to activate this delete button to work. It's currently not working, so let's quickly do that. So on the cart item, on this delete button, I want to activate that remove item from the cart function in the actions. So I want to fire off this function. So let's do that. Once again, this is really tedious, but it kind of brings the point home. Once you get used to doing this, it's actually not that bad. From React Redux, and then we const map dispatch to props. Then we get a dispatch, and we return some function, and this function is going to be remove from cart. I'm just naming it the exact same, so it just makes it easier. And here I can say some anonymous function will be fired off. This anonymous function will receive an ID, and I will dispatch this remove from cart function. So this remove.cart function does not refer to this one. I have to first import this to use it. So I will go here and I'll say import from, and navigate all the way to the Redux folder where I go into shopping and then get the actions. And here I can pull out the remove from cart. And with that done, now it actually points to that function and I'm able to use it. Let's connect, say null for props because we don't have props. We map dispatch to props like this, and then we just add the component. So if this done, this function is now in the props, so I can pull it out, destructure it out, just say remove from cart. And every time I click this button, so on click, I want to send an anonymous function, and this anonymous function should remove from cart, and this will remove the item data .id. So if I were to save this and go back to my application, add a few things to my cart, go to my cart and click on this button, you can see it removed the item. It even updated the state. So if I do this, I have nothing left. So we're getting there, we're nearly at the end. Thank you for holding on. If there's something you did not understand, leave a timestamp and a comment and I will try and get to you as fast as possible. I'm going through it fast now because it's kind of repetitive the whole time. But yeah, okay, let's quickly finish up. So what do we have to do now? We have the add. It works perfectly, all of this. You can see we have to do this adjust the quantity, and then the last one is viewing the actual page. This is still hard coded, so if I were to go here, it would show the same thing. So it's the adjust the quantity. Okay, so this is pretty simple. Inside of the cart item, we have this input. So on this input, we can have an on change. So every time I change this, I want to call on change handler. So I can say on change handler, and I'm going to create this function now because I like doing it separate. I don't like doing all of the logic in there. So I can say const on change handler, and this receives an event and like this. So if I were to console.log e.target.value and go back to our application and see what it logs out to me, if I were to add something to the cart, open my Devtools, go to the console, clear everything out here, and I were to change something here and set it to 2, I can see that is updating. So if I set it to 10, it is updating. But you can see that it's not physically updating in the UI, and the reason for this is because we're setting the value equal to what is currently in the state, which is wrong. We have to use two-way binding, so we can say use state and create a use state for that specific input. So we can say const input equals set input, and here we can say use state and set this equal to 1. It should always be 1. Or we can set this value actually equal to item item.quantity. So instead of setting it here equal to item.quantity, we set it equal to quantity there, and here we can just say set it equal to input. And if we save that, item data.quantity, sorry, just like this. Okay, so let's continue with the logic of the onChange handler. So whenever I use the onChange handler, I want to set the input equal to whatever e.target.value is, and in the same time I want to adjust the value in the state. So I'm going to have to use Redux again. I'm going to import the adjust quantity, and here I can call it down here, adjust quantity. This is a function. It receives two things, remember. It receives an ID and a value, and we can dispatch that adjust quantity, and we pass it the ID and a value, just like this. Now we can use this in our props and destructure it out of our props. Where are we at now? Right over here, just like this. And now we can use that function, adjust quantity, and we send it the current ID. So we can say item data.id, so whatever that current item is, and then the e.target.value. You cannot send it the input of the state, because state takes a while sometimes to update, so you won't always get the right value when you set the input. So this is why I'm setting it like this. And if I save this, this should all work. If I go to my cart, nothing is there. Add something to the cart. There's two of this items. If I go down, you can see, oh, it's changing to string. So we have to make sure that our input, so we have to check that the input that we log in our reducer, adjust quantity, this should be a plus to turn this value that is sent into an integer. If we save that and go back to our cart and do the exact same thing, add a few items, so we have 2 items. If I adjust this, it turns to 3. The total amount updates as well, turns this to 4, and this is all working great. Awesome. Let me just do this. So I can add this all the way. We should just set a minimum so it can't, okay, it's already set to can't go below 1. So this works perfect. And we can delete. The last thing we need to do is viewing the item. So I hope you're all doing well so far. Sorry this is a bit of a long video, but I'm trying to cover everything, and this is a pretty real life example of an application to use it. So thank you for sticking with me. Okay, let's do the last part, which is on the actual product. So we can say on the product over here, we have this link that takes us to some ID. So this some ID, we have the connect, and here we want to import load current item. We can add it to the map dispatch props, load current item. This receives the physical item, so this receives the entire item, not just some ID. So we dispatch load current item, and we send it the item, and now we can destructure it from our props. Load item, current item, like this. And whenever I were to press on this button, so if we were to go back, this button right over here, I want the state to populate the current item. So if I go into my Redux tools, my state, this current object is null. If I press, I want it to populate this current item with whatever this current item's data is. So let's quickly do that. And our reducer already does that for us. So we can just make this dynamic by saying whatever we clicked on, so we get the product data.id would be the URL it would link to, and then on click we want to load that data, so we can give it an anonymous function and say load current item and pass it in the product data, just like that. So with that out of the way, all we need to do is go to our single item, and here we have to load the right data from the current data. So once again, import connect React Redux, we go get the state, we say map state to props, and we return the current item, and we get this from the state shop dot current item. Let's see if I just named it that, I'm not sure. In the reducer I called it current item. That is correct. So now I just connect it to my component, map state to props, just like this. I can now destructure it, spelling mistake, I can destructure it from here, current item, and now I can use whatever is on the current item. So I can say current item dot image, and I'm just going to copy this once again and do it for all of the others.
I'm going to set the auto title, I'm going to set the title equal to title, the description is going to be description, and then the price is going to be equal to the price, just like this.
Awesome. And then on this add to cart we can use the exact same function, so we can import from all the way to the Redux folder into the shopping actions, and we want to add to cart. Whenever we do that we need to dispatch, so we can say map dispatch to props, and then we return that function. So we can say add to cart, we get an ID, anonymous function, which dispatch this function, and we send it that ID. And now we just pass it in as the second parameter, dispatch state to props, like this. So now we have access to it in the props, so I can say add to cart, and on this button when I want to unclick, we just send it this current items ID. So we can say add to cart and then current item.id and save. So if we were to go back and close this up, we already know it's going to work. I'm really confident. We can say add to cart, and now I can go view data. We'll see the specific item, and if I say add to cart here, it should update there as well. Add to cart, brilliant. Okay, so this all works. If I were to go and delete this and then view a different item which is dynamically rendered, add this to the cart, it should be 20, only one item, want to get 4 of these, $80, and all of this works. So the last thing I just want to add this is basically just to make this a bit more secure. So if I were to go to the item and I refresh the page, the current item is cleared, so it crashes. So in order to fix this problem, I go into the app file, just going to close all of this up. I go into the app file, and here I set a condition on this link. So I'm going to create this, and I'm going to use Redux here as well. So I can say connect React Redux, and I get the state, map state to props to return the current item, and we want to get it from the state.shop.current item. We want to map this to the component, so you can say connect, just like this. Now we have access to this in our app, and we can see already I'm pulling it out there. I can call it current item, like this. And now I want to say the following. I want to check if there is no current item loaded. I want to redirect from this page, otherwise it's going to keep on crashing. So if there is an item, if there is no item, I want to redirect. So here I'm just going to comment this out. So from the React Router DOM, I'm going to redirect to the slash page. Else, if there is actually something in there, I can load this route just like this. So now if I go back and I go to an item and I refresh, instead of crashing, it would just redirect to the home page. So that is the entire application. I'm really sorry for this long video. I hope for these of you who stick through it that it was helpful, and I'm definitely going to try and make the videos a bit shorter, and I'm going to try and make courses out of this, so long playlist courses of how to build an e-commerce site, a chat app, all of these fun stuff, instead of making it one large video. So thank you for those of you who stick with me through this, and please remember to like and subscribe, and if you have any questions, leave a comment down below, and yes, I'll see you in the next one. Thank you. Cheers.